And welcome back to Mark My Words Football Podcast with Rob.
And Scott.
And we thank you for listening to the podcast. Feel free to follow us on any platform. We are available anywhere you get your podcasts. And we are here to recap what was an incredibly exciting Super Bowl, one of the highest scoring Super Bowls that we have seen in quite some time. And very exciting. Two great offenses battling it out, making for an incredible game to remember.
Yeah, very fun one in this one, 38-35, and I think certainly surpassed our expectations for how high scoring it would be.
Right. I think I was leaning more towards a low scoring battle that was the offenses would open up later in the game because I said the first quarter would be scoreless, but the team scored touchdowns on their very first drives, disproving that pretty quickly, and it turned out that we were wrong, and I'm grateful that we were wrong in this game.
Yeah, me too. And I think Philadelphia's offense certainly impressed me in that fact that I didn't believe they were capable of keeping up with this kind of offensive output, but indubitably they were.
Right, they went toe-to-toe with them the entire game, leading most of the game, and they really looked like they were calm, cool, and collected. I remember saying that I thought the Chiefs may get out to a jump and kind of get the lead on the Eagles, and then it would be difficult for them to come back due to the Eagles' lack of Super Bowl experience and the Chiefs' abundance of it. But the Eagles came out poised, looking like a very veteran team.
Yeah, they certainly did. And I think Jalen Hurts' performance here is going to end up being overshadowed because if the Eagles would have won this one, I think it would have been looked at. He would have easily been Super Bowl MVP and would have been looked at as one of the best Super Bowl performances of all time.
Right, because he had almost 400 yards, total yards between running and passing, and a near perfect game. Like 4 total touchdowns, like only 1 turnover, which was an odd one, but I mean, just a great game.
Yeah, that turnover certainly puts a blemish on it, as it was a turn for a touchdown. But then you have to imagine, like, if that turnover didn't happen, like, do the Chiefs ever get back in the game? Well, maybe they still do, but I think that certainly played a big part into helping the Chiefs get back into it.
Yes, and I was thoroughly impressed with Jalen Hurts throughout this game. He was somebody that throughout the year I was doubting, but given this moment, the pressure of it, I don't care how good your team is around you, in the Super Bowl, it just, the immense pressure of being a quarterback in it is just so great, and I thought that we saw like the true best version of Jalen Hurts. And if I were the Eagles, I would pay him right now before he gets more expensive.
You 100% agree with that.
He is no doubt in my mind a franchise quarterback going forward.
Yep. And in terms of Kansas City and their offense, despite not seeing the stat line from Mahomes that you're used to seeing, I still feel like we walked away impressed by him.
Yes.
I mean, they really did what they had to do in the second half. Like, they didn't have that explosive offense that got them back in the game. They didn't have those chunk plays or, like, a really long touchdown that brought them back into it. I mean, other than maybe the Bolton touchdown from defensively. I mean, Mahomes and the Chiefs' offense was really able to kind of adopt the Tom Brady death by a million paper cuts aspect and really just slowly claw their way back into it. And by the end of it, they were pretty much able to end with the ball and end it just how the script they wanted to.
Yes, and they have been capable of doing that all year long, and Pacheco has really been a godsend for them. Just when they needed it in that second half, it seemed like he was busting out like 8, 9, 10-yard carries all over the place, really just giving them the boost and the juice that they needed.
Yeah, I think without Pacheco, they wouldn't have won this game.
I would concur with that.
Yeah, the Kansas City's rushing offense really came to play for them. They wouldn't have won without it.
Yes, with Jerick McKinnon as well. And Patrick Mahomes giving us a nice show of his legs, which I will take credit for this one. I did predict this before the game started, that Mahomes' ankle was hurt and the line was low on his rushing yards, but I thought that he would, with the adrenaline going, be able to do something on the ground.
Yeah, really good bet on your part there.
Only one I got right, though.
Yeah, because honestly, I was questioning it a little bit because of his bum ankle. But, yeah, really good point by you, as he had a couple of huge long runs in this game.
Right, and this was just an incredible game for Mahomes, considering he re-injured the ankle during the game, and we were wondering, how is this going to go? That he went into halftime, they were down. It's like, are they going to roll over? Or, obviously they did not, but he really showed us, I think the volume of yards is due to that ankle injury, but he did not turn it over. His completion percentage was great. He made the right throws at the right times.
Yeah, and I think it's a big credit to the KC offensive line, as well as KC really choosing the scheme and the throws and the plays that they needed to win in this game. Mahomes was getting the ball out in under 2.5 seconds nearly every play, quickly getting it off, making sure the Eagles' defense wouldn't touch him. And a credit to their offensive line as well for keeping the defensive line away, who had really a historic sack production this year.
Yes, and the Chiefs' offensive line stood up really well against this Eagles' defensive front, which is really good, maybe the best in the league. And they really did their job here. And I was very impressed by the Chiefs as a whole on just their poise on offense this game.
I had a good stat here from Next Gen Stats. It said Patrick Mahomes was pressured on 25.9% of his dropbacks in Super Bowl 57. This was the first game since Week 12 where the Eagles did not record a pressure rate of over 34%, snapping their Next Gen Stats era record of 8 straight games.
Wow, that's impressive.
I think that's really impressive by the Chiefs offensive line. And just really good job. And kind of a cool stat in general that there wasn't a true sack in this game.
Yeah, that's incredible.
There were technically 2 sacks by the KC defense, but both were pretty much Hurts stepping out of bounds.
Right, I remember seeing those.
About
yes.
a yard behind.
Those count as sacks for some reason, but
yeah, but they weren't true sacks.
right, because maybe he probably wasn't even looking to pass on those plays, to be honest.
Right.
But another thing I want to shout out is Andy Reid and the Chiefs coaching staff, Eric Bieniemy and Spagnuolo. They just did a really good job coaching up these guys in a year where they were less talented than before, the year that maybe other teams in the AFC, the Bills, the Bengals, the Chargers even, could have overtaken them. This coaching staff just really was able to, every single game, make the right game plan for this team.
Yeah, and I think it was an absolute masterclass of play calling in this one.
Oh, incredible. It was a clinic.
Yeah, like in terms of coaching, like there's not a better group out there than the KC coaching staff.
Right.
I mean, really in every way this year. Like I said it many times throughout this year. Every time I watch a Chiefs game, I am thoroughly impressed with the play calling that they bring out. Like they bring out the most creative red zone schemes I've ever seen. Like you're just running absolute like crazy plays where you're seeing the most wide open receivers you've ever seen. I mean, that really happened on both the Moore and the Toney touchdowns. Just wide open.
Right, especially with Juju and Kadarius Toney and especially Travis Kelce. People wonder how is Kelce always open? That's kind of like the joke. Like, there's 4 guys covering him. Well, yes, Kelce's amazing, but those routes that are designed are even more amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is a huge difference in their abilities there. They are just so incredibly good at designing an offense. And when you pair that with one of the best quarterbacks ever, like this is nearly unstoppable.
And I would tell you that looking at these stat lines, I am shocked that the Chiefs won because what were we saying before the game started? The Eagles have the better O-line, the better run game, the better receivers, the better defense. The one thing that they did not have better than the Chiefs was the quarterback. And if you told me that the Eagles quarterback, Hurts, would play better than Mahomes, I would have said Eagles win this game.
Right.
And somehow they didn't. It's almost astounding.
Yeah, it was almost kind of a backwards type script than we thought, where with Hurts really playing amazing, and then the KC rushing offense coming to play.
Yes.
But ended up being just a really good game in general, and I think one that probably ranks maybe definitely in the top 20 all time, and certainly one of the best in the last couple of years. Definitely better than last year's one, I would say.
Yeah, very exciting. I think the most exciting one since the last Eagles Super Bowl against the Patriots.
Yeah, that was definitely one of my favorites in my lifetime.
Yes, the Foles classic.
I guess we should touch on one point quickly, as everybody does. With that penalty.
Oh, yeah.
I believe that was a penalty, and it sucks. The spot that it came in, it was kind of ticky-tack, and it sucked because they hadn't called it all game, and everyone wanted to see overtime, or I did anyway. But all said and done, it was a penalty.
Yeah, I do agree. Like, when you look at the footage, it definitely was a penalty. Maybe not the strongest penalty, and I don't think it really impacted the route, but it was a penalty. Even the player owned up to it. So, yeah, good call, I guess. But, yeah, I do agree that in those situations, I just want to see him play. But in the end, I guess you really can't argue with that.
Right.
And, I don't want to say I told you so. Actually, I do want to say it. It's been a rough year for me, but I did tell you so, guys, with the Eagles' defense having a rough batch against Mahomes. The only great quarterback they faced the entire year, and they got shredded. So, just to end with that point there.
All right, well, I'll rebuttal a little, but I'll leave this conversation for longer. I feel like I believe that a good offense can beat a great defense.
Oh, they definitely can, but not. I think the Chiefs' offense was great. The Eagles' defense was not. The Eagles' defense has been good in relative comparison to who they faced. They've only faced 3 good quarterbacks all year. Dak shredded them. Rodgers shredded them. Got hurt in big games, still did. And Mahomes, and they were not up to the challenge of facing a good quarterback the entire year. They feasted on lesser competition. But they did their job the entire year. They are a good defense. They could be a great defense, but the fact is they weren't tested enough. So when the moment came, they collapsed. I do think they had the potential to be a good defense, or a great defense, but when the moment was there, they just didn't have enough experience facing those great quarterbacks that they needed to. That's a fair point, I would say.
And one more point I think I'd like to touch on in our Super Bowl recap is quickly go over our prop bets and predictions for this game. So myself, I had Hurts over 49.5 rushing yards, which was correct. Mahomes over 1.5 passing touchdowns, which was correct. And I had Elliott under 7.5 points, which I missed on. And Robert's picks, he had Mahomes over 19 rushing yards, which is correct. Very good one pick, as I said before. And he had 2 involving a Philly special that was being intercepted, and then a Philly special of Kelsey to Mahomes touchdown. Philly special was not attempted this game.
Disappointed.
I was hoping there would be. Actually, I did find a little bet on FanDuel where you could bet that, and I did. I didn't bet very much, but it was still something that everybody kind of wants to see happen. You want to see like the fun trick plays.
Yes. Why didn't we see that this game?
And then, of course, my weekly 3-leg parlay went over 3 because I had the Eagles covering, and the match score under 50.5, which it went much over that.
Yeah.
Which ended up being very fun watch for everybody.
Yes. And another one that I had wrong was scoreless first quarter.
Right.
And obviously, first 2 drives, 2 touchdowns. I was like, yep, that's a great prediction. As soon as it could have been debunked, it was. And hopefully none of you bet on any of the stuff that we predicted out there, because you would have lost a lot of money, potentially. But yes, that's the recap of the Super Bowl and our Super Bowl bets. And now we are going into a retrospective mode as we take a look back on our season predictions before the year started. So this is an extremely hard thing to do, predicting the future of the NFL season and all its ups and downs, but we did our best and we predicted the entire records for all the teams as well as the playoffs and awards. And now we have a formula for tallying up the points, and Scott has done the honors of doing that.
Yeah, and we went over this back in episode 1 now, so everybody a quick refresher once again of how our formula works. We go through NFL Simulator Online, picking every single game individually to make sure the records come out correctly, and then we'll give you the playoff matchups and go through and pick those, and then we will pick our award winners as well. So the formula for points is if you correctly predict a team record, you get 15 points. If you're 1 game off, it is 10 points. If you're 2 games off, it is 5 points. If you're 3 games off, it is 2 points. And if you're more than 3 games off, it is 0 points. If you correctly predict the award winner, you receive 10 points. And if your predicted award winner gets nominated but does not win, you get 5 points. As for the playoffs and Super Bowl, a team advancing to the predicted playoff round gets you 5, 10, or 15 points for the corresponding round. Predicting the Super Bowl winner gets you 20 points. And predicting the correct playoff matchup and the correct round gets you 15 points. So that is our formula for this one. So we will now go through division by division here, and team by team, and see how we did.
And it's not good, spoiler.
So why don't we start off here in the AFC East. So in the AFC East, we had the Buffalo Bills going 13-3. I had them at 15-2, and Rob had them at 13-4. Not too bad with that.
No, not bad at all.
Next up, we had...
They could have been 14-3.
Next up, we had the Miami Dolphins at 9-8. I had the Dolphins at 8-9, and Rob had them at 8-9.
Yes, so pretty close on that one. I don't think we thought they would be as explosive as they were. But in the end, the injuries kind of leveled it out, and it made it look like a better pick than I think it actually was at 8-9.
And a correct record prediction for Rob on that one. Next up, New England was 8-9, and we did not do very good in this one. Rob had them at 5-12, and as did I. 5-12, we each had them at.
Yeah, kind of knew that was a bad decision when I made it.
And then next up, we had the Jets at 7-10, and Rob had the Jets at 4-13, and I had their correct record predicted at 7-10. So in total for each of us here, Rob received 29 points for the AFC East, and I received 32.
So that was a decent division in terms of points overall. 32 points. I feel like that's pretty good.
Yeah. Next up, we had we'll do the AFC West. So in the AFC West, the Chiefs went 14-3, and Robert, you had them at 11-6, and I had them at 12-5. So actually, we ended up doing a little better than we thought they'd do. And then we had the Chargers going 10-7, and we were both very high on the Chargers.
Yeah.
And did not get points from them, with 13-4 and 14-3 respectively there. And then the Raiders going 6-11. Another one that's not very good for us there. I had the Raiders going 9-8, and Rob had them going 11-6.
Yeah.
So no points for the Raiders either. And then we had Denver going 5-12. And again, not a very good one, as I had Denver at 7-10, and Rob had them at 10-7. So in total there, I had 14 points for the AC West, and Rob with 2.
Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah.
The Raiders were just the most disappointing team all year, though. That was like my team this year. Did not work out.
Yeah, we kept coming back to them. We wouldn't let them go.
No, we wouldn't.
And then in the North, we had the Bengals at 12-4, and I had them at 13-4, and Rob had them at 11-6. So not too bad with them. Then we had Baltimore 10-7. I correctly predicted that at 10-7, and Rob had them at 12-5. Then we had Pittsburgh at 9-8, where Rob correctly predicted their record, and I had them down at 5-12. So no points for me there.
That was awesome. Pittsburgh was exactly who I thought they would be this year, with the 9-8 coming in dramatic fashion. But I will defend my Ravens pick a little bit because Lamar got hurt and their offense was non-existent. So maybe if he was back, they would have won a couple games to get me to that 12-5.
Yes, they could have. And then last up we had Cleveland at 7-10 there, and Rob had them at 10-7, and I had them at 9-8. So both a little bit too high on the Browns, but I think we both believe that they should have won more games than they did.
Yeah, it was the thing that was going to worry me was when Watson came back, but it ended up being what they did before that kind of turned them in.
Yeah. In the AFC South, Jacksonville won that at 9-8, but we both had them quite a bit lower at least. Yeah, Rob had them at 6-11, whereas I had them at 7-10. Yeah, so not many points for that. Then Tennessee finishing at 7-10, which of course Rob had them at 9-8, and I had them at 8-9. And so Titans having a really good start to the year, or in terms of the winning column, and
Plummeting.
losing many in a row there.
Yes. Also injuries playing a role though, because Tannehill did go down, so Malik Willis not giving you much. Maybe they would have squeaked out a couple more wins there.
The Colts at 4-12, we were very much off the mark on, because we each had them at 11-6.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was terrible.
Yeah, that was
Complete swing and a miss. No, I'm not gonna make any excuses. That was horrible.
Yeah, 0 points for us on that. And then Houston at 3-13. Rob had them 2-15, and I had them 4-13. So we both came pretty close with that on either side of their number.
Yes.
So in total for the AFC South, I had 25 points and Rob had 17.
Not great.
No.
What's the maximum? You could have 60? potentially, if you got all the records right, because 15 for a correct record.
Yeah, so the max points you could have was 60.
I feel like 30 is good.
Yeah, 30 is, I think, a good prediction here. Move over to the NFC East next, where Philly won the division at 14-3. And again, we were very low on them as we had discussed last episode. As Rob had them 9-8, and I had them 8-9. So no points there. Then Dallas came in at 12-5. I correctly predicted their record, and Rob had them at 10-7. Then we had the Giants at 9-7-1, where we both had them very low. I had them at 3-14, and Rob at 5-12. Really impressed this year they did. And then the Commanders were 8-1. I had them 7-10, and Rob had them at 5-12. So all in all for the NFC East, I had 25 points, and Rob had 7. So now we'll move on to the NFC West. Oh boy, this is
our worst collective division, I think.
Yeah. So in the West, we had San Francisco winning the division at 13-4. I had them at 11-6, and Rob had them at 7-10. So I believe in this one, that was the only place that I got any points was from San Francisco. Because up next we had Seattle at 9-8, whereas Rob had them finishing at 2-15, and I at 4-13. That's great. And then the Rams finishing 5-12, where Rob had them at 13-4, and I had them at 11-6.
Injuries did play a part to that. Cooper Kupp and Matt Stafford getting out.
True, but they still weren't that good when they were in.
No.
And then finally the Cardinals at 4-13. I had them at 9-8, and Rob had them at 11-6. So Rob with a 0 burger for the NFC West, and I had 5.
Horrible, yeah.
Yeah, that was absolute garbage.
Atrocious.
And then in the NFC North, we had Minnesota winning that one at 13-4. Rob had them at 11-6, and I had them at 9-8. So they obviously surpassed anybody's expectations this year. Then following them up, we had the Lions at 9-8. I had the Lions at 7-10, and Rob had them at 8-9. So it came very close to their record. Then we had Green Bay at 8-9, and of course, us being much higher on Green Bay, I had them at 14-3, and Rob had them at 12-5. And then we had Chicago finishing at 3-14, and I had them at 5-12, and Rob had them at 1-16.
They played like they were 1-16.
Yeah, they kind of did. So for that one, the NFC North, I had 10 points, and Rob had 20. And then for our final division, we had the NFC South, where we had Tampa Bay at 8-9. I had the Bucs finishing 14-3, and Rob had them at 11-6. So no points for me there. And then we had Carolina finishing at 7-10 in this division, and Rob had them at 9-8, which was kind of a surprising pick at the time, I remember. And I had them at 6-11.
I was banking on Baker being the comeback player of the year.
And then we had the New Orleans Saints finishing at 7-10, and Rob had them at 9-8, and I had them at 7-10, which was correct.
Prediction, yeah.
And then finally we had the Atlanta Falcons finishing at 7-10 as well. I had the Falcons at 2-15, and Rob had them at 3-14. So we missed the mark a bit on the Falcons there.
Yeah, I shot low, and then midway I shot high.
Yeah.
And both were wrong.
So in total there, I had 25 points from the NFC South, and Rob had 12.
All right. And yeah, overall, terrible. The worst we've ever done in the regular season. But I fear it gets worse in the playoffs.
Yeah. So, in the playoffs, Rob had the Colts defeating the Chiefs, the Raiders defeating the Ravens, and the Bengals defeating the Bills.
Wow, 2 teams that didn't even win a playoff game. 1 team that didn't even make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yowzer.
And then the NFC had the Vikings defeating the Cowboys, the Cardinals defeating the Bucs, and the Packers defeating the Saints. A lot of non-playoff teams there.
Yeah.
A lot of non-playoff. Only there's a few in there. Only 50% right there. And then continuing on, you had the Chargers defeating the Raiders, the Bills defeating the Colts, and the Packers defeating the Vikings, and the Rams defeating the Cardinals.
Again, that Rams thing just hurting it.
Yeah, and then finishing up in the NFC and AFC championships with the Chargers over the Bills, and the Packers over the Rams, and having the Packers win the Super Bowl over the Chargers. So for Rob there, his only points come from the Bills winning their wild card matchup. That's the only points he gets us for the Bills advances to the divisional round.
Let's go, Buffalo.
Wow, this is an absolute garbage of a playoff prediction there. But I figured mine is not too much better either. I had the Chiefs over the Colts. I had the Chargers over the Ravens, and the Bengals over the Raiders. And then on the NFC side, I had the Rams over the 49ers, the Cowboys over the Vikings, and the Packers over the Cardinals. And then after that, I had the Bills over the Chiefs and the Chargers over the Bengals. And then the Bucks over the Rams and the Packers over the Cowboys. Yeah, so
that's where it ends there.
Yeah. And then in the AFC and NFC championships, I had the
Chargers Bills, I believe.
Yes, I had the Bills over the Chargers and the Packers over the Bucks. So, and I had the Bills to beat the Packers in the Super Bowl. So in this one, the only points I got was for the Bills, Chiefs, Bengals, and Cowboys for advancing to the divisional round. Nothing other than that.
Hey, that's decent considering what I had.
Yeah, but
That's
still
decent.
not good at all.
I mean, they were actually playoff teams, so. So yeah, again, just horrible. Just worse than we've ever done. Like we've done this. This is our third year now, and this right off the gate we were saying man, this year is starting off really rough, and it continued throughout the entire year, just not good.
This was by far the least amount of points we've gotten in the playoffs.
Yes.
As each year we've gotten respectively 25, 40, 30, and 45 in the playoffs.
And this year we both had what? You had 20 and I had 5.
Yeah, so I had a grand total of 20 and Ron had 5.
Yeah, that's terrible.
And now for our final aspect here, we had the NFL awards. So none of us had a correct winner predicted in this one.
First time ever.
So, but Rob got points for Micah Parsons being nominated for Defensive Player of the Year, and for Aiden Hutchinson being nominated for Defensive Rookie of the Year. I got points for Josh Allen being nominated for MVP, Aiden Hutchinson being nominated for Defensive Rookie of the Year, and for Christian McCaffrey being nominated for Comeback Player of the Year. So in total for awards, I had 15 points, and Rob had 10.
Although I will say it's bullcrap that Christian Watson wasn't nominated for Offensive Rookie of the Year. That was bull jive.
Right.
He was fantastic. Absolute boost to the Packers offense this year. They were stagnant, and he just came in there, very valuable player for them, and not even being nominated, kind of a kick in the teeth there.
Right. And yeah, I liked that. And that was I felt like it ended up being a really random one at the start, but it looked kind of good at somewhere near the end.
It did, because I thought even Romeo Doubs would be better, because that was just kind of the talk in the training camp. I'm like, okay, Christian Watson, yeah, he could be good, but he far exceeded my expectations for a first year.
But now it is time to reveal our total points here. And for the final points for our 2022-23 season predictions, Robert had a total of 134, and I with 201.
And for reference, 134 is the worst by me, and out of all of us, the years we've been doing this, the worst ever by a wide margin.
Yes. The worst score we've previously had was my 159 2 years ago.
Yes. And kind of the house average seems to be around the low 200s, 220 to 230 range.
Yes.
And so this year, not our best year, but very crazy. I think everyone was taken aback by how this year played out.
Yeah, a lot of really crazy things, especially in the NFC, which was really flipped on its head compared to how we thought it would go.
Yes, the old veteran quarterback-led teams just kind of sputtered out, and the Giants were and the Seahawks, nobody saw that.
Yeah, Giants Seahawks surprised everybody by miles. Yeah, and then the Bucks, the Rams, and the Packers really kind of screwed everybody.
Yes, they did. Royally. Like, I could see, I would believe someone who thought Packers would take a step back, or even the Bucks or Rams. But if you said you had the Giants and the Seahawks going to the playoffs, like, you're just lying. Like, there's no way.
Right.
Like, the Seahawks, I thought, okay, this could be the worst offense in the league right now.
Yeah, certainly thought that, and they ended up having actually a good offense.
Really good offense.
Which is so surprising. Yeah, because Geno Smith, they wrote him off, but he didn't write back.
Yeah, that's true. I love that. I don't think I've ever seen like something like that. Just complete. Like, he was awful early part of his career, just disappeared, and then just springs up again and just does really well with a team that has a defensive like head coach. Like, really good.
Yeah. And then over in the AFC, I think you like top of the conference was kind of how you predicted it, or how kind of predicted it mostly, with like Bills, Bengals, Chiefs being pretty good
in various orders. Yeah.
Yeah, but the Chargers being a little worse than we thought.
Mm-hmm. And the Colts being up there, just absurd.
Yeah, the Colts being up there, absurd. Yeah, for sure. And then a couple other AFC West teams, Denver and the Raiders, both being a lot worse than we thought they'd be.
Yes. Yeah, the Raiders, as I said, probably my biggest disappointment of the year. Like, looking back on which team was the most disappointing for me, I do believe it was the Raiders. Just because like they looked like they had everything going perfectly, just how they played last year, and it just did not translate on the field in any way. Now they're incomplete. You know, they don't know what they're going to do at quarterback. Derek Carr is gone. So definitely a big disappointment from them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's going to be a very interesting offseason for them.
Well, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode and the entire Mark My Words catalog of this year. This is the end of season 1, our very first season doing this. It's been a great fun to do this every single week with you guys, with Scott here on the show. And we look forward to seeing you all next season. We will be doing off-season episodes kind of at random, maybe at various points in it. But for now, we will say goodbye, and we hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast. And this has been Mark My Words Football Podcast with Rob
And Scott.
and we are tuning out.